right? And self-awareness. And it's a highly developed area of their brain. What we're looking at here is a completely highly developed being.
Listen to this. So he was also told that communication could happen in the species within a 1,000-mile radius. So that as long as there was a dolphin within that 1,000-mile radius, they could communicate to the larger group.
Subsect of all consciousness have a certain vibration to it, and they're of course they're going to have individual personalities, but because they have this broader consciousness in general, as we've seen in remote viewing, they're aware of that, the group mind, and a lot of information goes through that group mind.
Do dolphins have greater interdimensional knowledge of the universe? And do they want to share it with humanity? Do orcas and cetaceans have a greater level of self awareness and even compassion than we previously knew? Remote viewing data, telepathy research, and sonic experiments turned up shocking results about animal consciousness.
Find out where dolphins are really from, why they're even here, and where the root of dolphin consciousness starts. All this and more in this episode with me, remote viewer John Vivanco, and investigative researcher Rob Counts. You'll find out that dolphins may just be more out of this world than this metaphysical episode. Are you listening to the Metaphysical Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or elsewhere? Leave us a 5-star rating and review to help us reach even more people. And remember to like, follow, and subscribe on YouTube, Rumble, Ganjing World, Twitter, and Facebook.
John, how you doing?
Doing well.
This might be the weirdest episode that we shoot on animals. Dolphins are really, really interesting.
To me, I don't know. I don't think it's weird personally. Um, you get used to things when you're remote viewing, and it's like my whole worldview is not like anyone else's, is my guess, because of the many years and operational and non-operational projects. Things aren't the way that we think they are, and so it doesn't seem weird to me. I mean, there are weird things that we remote view where I go, huh? But this isn't one of them for me because it
Yeah.
feels so normal and natural if we just open our minds a bit.
Yeah, I think what will probably might surprise people is just how advanced these creatures are, especially orcas. I mean, dolphins too, for sure, but orcas are wow, just there's some next level things here. We'll try to like recount this history related to orcas and the study of orcas because I think it's really important to get to a place where when John reveals more of his remote viewing data on these things, it makes sense even where that's coming from. And there's so many interesting facts like revolved around that, right? Now, prior to the 1950s, apparently no one had really ever captured an orca. Now, orcas are killer whales, guys, in case you didn't know. Just okay. Killer whales is kind of a incorrect name for these things. I think what they saw is that these orcas could kill whales, and they started calling them whale killers, and then it changed over into the name killer whale eventually. For reference, Shamu is an orca. So everybody is very aware of Shamu from SeaWorld. And the story goes that the whales started trailing boats and gave themselves up to be captured so they could start communicating with humans. They just started
Wait,
like hanging out.
they gave themselves up. That's the story. Really, they gave
Yeah.
themselves up to be captured. Huh.
This is the story I heard retold by a man who was very close to Dr. Paul Spong. Now, Paul started I guess he started training in college to become an orca trainer, and then moved on to become a whale trainer at the Vancouver Zoo, and started to feel that the whale was really training him.
Well, that's the thing. That's the whole thing about animals. You know, like the pets that we have, like dogs, for instance, the human has to be trained into the dog's world in order to deal with the dog. But most people will just anthropomorphize the dog as though it's just an extension of a human. It's like a human, which is actually not a good thing for the dog and the pack and the pecking order. And so that's one of the interesting things about animals is that we think we're training them. I mean, we train them to do things that we want them to do, but more so they are training us if we really pay attention.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I think he started to feel that the orca was having much more of an impact on his life than he was having on the orca's life. And so he started unconventional research that went way outside of, training low-level animals. Normal training would be something like showing 2 cards, and then if they get it right, you reward them with food or something. Eventually, like, the orca just started getting bored with that. So it started choosing wrong on purpose. And,
So basically, what was he doing? He was doing something like leaf. Which one's a picture of a leaf?
yeah.
So it's something like that.
Well, and it's like, imagine if you're a super intelligent being and someone keeps giving you these, like, stupid things to choose every time. You're just like, "Whatever, dude. Go
It's kind of
away."
like it's kind of like Zener cards, and you know what Zener cards are, where there are symbols, big bold symbols on the cards, and in order to test psychic ability, someone will hold a Zener card and say, "Okay, what is this?" And a lot of researchers have gone the route of practicing and training, like trying to test psychic ability through Zener cards, but is the most boring
Yes.
way to go about anything
Yes.
that after just a couple of times doing it, you just shut down because it's just, come on, you can come up with a better experiment than that.
This article that I'm kind of explaining all of this from, was really fascinating. It was all about Paul Spong's research and how he came to do all of this. So if you guys want, you can check this article out yourself. Spong basically campaigned at a certain. Actually, sorry, I skipped a part. At this point, when the orca got started getting really bored, it was then that he started to play music to the orca, and he he started to feel like this creature shouldn't be in the zoo. It was just too the way it was responding to the music, like, it was way too conscious in ways that other animals were not. And so how could you keep a creature like this in chains, so to speak, or in prison, when this thing should be out there? And so he started to campaign for releasing the orca and was fired from his job. If you splice this article that I'm describing with this video that I found, is a fascinating video. The beginning part is a little bit out there, but once he gets into all of his information about Paul Spong, it's very, very interesting. Now, at this point, when Spong starts playing music and all of that stuff, he- he's on something. He starts to find that these creatures are way more intelligent and more capable than anyone is aware of. So he convinces the 6 founding members of Greenpeace to start it. He starts going out, going onto ships, getting arrested like hundreds of times. And Spong claims to this gentleman in this video that he has some sort of telepathic connection with these whales. He started noticing that every single thing that he told them to do in the water in his head, they would start doing.
And so when a dolphin looks at a human being, uh, we're all sleeping because we have one side of our brain turned off.
Now, it's also
That's
claimed
fascinating.
it's
Wow.
totally fascinating.
But I mean, you hear this, don't you hear this? These stories, if you go into the new age underbelly of dolphin experiences, You hear a lot of these same stories, whether they're true or not, I have no idea. But I do know that yeah, they all have these incredible telepathic abilities.
Yeah, maybe they can, maybe they can see things that we can't. I mean,
Well, wait,
it's
can't dolphins see in every? I think you mentioned this to me. They can see in every light spectrum that we know of.
apparently we see like maybe 9 or 10% of the electromagnetic scale. They allegedly can see 100% of this scale. Like we can't
Right,
even imagine what they're seeing. Like they can probably see their sounds because frequency registers on electromagnetic scale,
right,
right?
right. Well, yeah, that's the thing with orcas, for instance, is that they build a picture, and dolphins they build a picture of the world around them with sound frequency, and apparently, from what I've heard, they can even see inside of things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's things bouncing around in there. Who
right.
knows? It's claimed that he was told that there's no such thing as an individual orca. So now this is after he's got telepathic communication with them. He is told that there's no such thing as an individual orca or dolphin in the world, that they are cells in a larger body of consciousness.
Yeah, that's like what we see with remote viewing. It's like humans can get so individualized and separate from everything else. They believe that they're separate from everything else. But once you step back a little bit, there is a broader consciousness of humans, and then there's a broader consciousness of everything. The dolphins, as this sort of subsect of all consciousness, have a certain vibration to it, and they're of course they're going to have individual personalities, but because they have this broader consciousness in general, as we've seen in remote viewing, they're aware of that, the group mind, and a lot of information goes through that group mind, and they don't perceive themselves as being individuals in a sense. They just don't. It's but it's not like ants where there's absolute unawareness. Well, ants could be aware. They could absolutely be aware that they're part
They're
of
smart,
a
man.
broader consciousness. And you got to wonder about that. Well, it's like humans become so isolated within their own individuality
Hmm.
that they don't recognize that. And that's the disconnection. I mean, that's the disconnection that we have from the subconscious. So yeah, that's a really interesting thing that he was told by the orcas. I mean,
Yeah.
God.
It, and I mean, you guys, if you don't believe that, listen to this. So he was also told that communication could happen in the species within a 1,000 mile radius. So that as long as there was a dolphin within that 1,000 mile radius, they could communicate to the larger group.
That must be with sound, because um, you know there can be communication on the non-local level, like psychically, has no limit to how far away it is. It could be on the other side of the universe. So that must be specifically to do with sound moving through water.
Or a dimension that we don't maybe understand, that they
Could be,
are
yeah.
more
I'm
aware
you
of
know
or
I'm
they
just
exist in.
I'm just thinking out loud. I don't know
Of
for sure.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the whale wanted to prove this to Dr. Spong. He was to go to this bay north of Vancouver with video equipment to record what was going to happen, and he told and brought along a whole group of people that he worked with. Now, again, if you want to watch the whole thing, like this video right here goes over this entire thing. So it's called Dolphins and Whales. It's called Drunvalo Melchizedek.
That's
Dolphins
the
and
dude's
Whales.
name. That's his name.
Must be his name.
Yeah, it's his name,
Such a
Melchizedek. That guy is
crazy
some kind
name.
of spiritual guy.
Well, anyway, he knows Paul Spong personally, he's claiming here. And it's just a really fascinating little speech at the beginning where he's talking about dolphins and their consciousness and Paul Spong's whole history here, which in a bizarre way, I corroborated by looking at a lot of the other articles about Paul Spong's research. They don't go as full on as this guy in describing all of it, but him playing music to them, all of this stuff, all of it corroborated. The only thing, of course, that they're not willing to talk about is the telepathic stuff, which he's going full on into. Now, the whales reportedly told them that, he was going to prove it to them that to bring a group of people that he worked with, and he told them, they told him that this was going to happen on a certain day at noon. All the whales would come into the bay and swim up onto the shorelines and look them right in the eyes. And then that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
All of
Yeah.
them at once. And they had all of the reportedly all of the equipment was on. Like, everyone that he took saw this. And so at that point they were like, this is legit, right?
Wow. That's
And he
crazy.
and this was in Vancouver, and he started the Orca lab right near where this event took place and has been in deep research ever since.
That's incredible. That's
Yeah.
incredible. I mean, when you get to the brain structure, like the whole brain structure of the orca, it's actually something that's really fascinated scientists for a while, because they've got this thing called gyrification, where that's the wrinkling and folding in the
Yeah.
cortex of the brain, and they have the most wrinkled and folded cortex of any species, and that's like basically it's nerve tissue that is so close together that they're able to process information really fast,
Mm.
extremely fast, so they can handle more information at once and process it way faster than most other beings, most other creatures.
Wow.
And then on top of that, they've got this paralimbic system that is used for like spatial memory and like navigation purposes. So like the fast processing and that spatial memory, you're talking about them understanding the ocean like no, like nothing, right? Like way beyond us. And then, as well as that, they have part of their cortex is highly developed, which is related to empathy and compassion, right? And self awareness. And it's a highly developed area of their brain. So, what we're looking at here is a completely highly developed being. Highly developed being. Now, they have a different brain structure than humans. So, and most of their brain structure is dealt with like auditory synapses. Most of their brain structure is. So they're, and that is like for their navigational purposes. And the amount of information that they can like process all at once is incredibly high. Now add to that the empathy side. I mean, here you get into a whole different level of being that has developed. Okay, so maybe it's not developing technology and language, but it's got developments somewhere else that turns it into a creature that has a more advanced type of brain and whole nervous system.
Yeah, this guy claimed that they could see orally, like that, like their aura.
I go back to this statement that you said earlier about Spong and had to do with the orcas. And the claim was that there is no individual orca, right? Or no individual dolphin, no individual orca. Um, and okay, so there's that, right? So we've seen that with remote viewing data, right? But one of the other things that we've also seen, which is backed up by their developed brain, both the orca and the dolphin, the orca being more, is the empathy side. Okay, this is really important when it comes to how and why they interact with humans. I mean, I'm not talking about the teenage orcas that are knocking boats over and laughing at the humans swimming in the water. I'm talking about like the overall, if that's the case, I don't know. I'm talking about the overall consciousness of the orca and the direction of it, of the direction they want to go. So when you get to Spong, and what happened there, and what we've remote viewed surrounding his situation and what was going on with the orcas, it was really fascinating because these beings were coming from that standpoint of empathy, that standpoint of compassion, in wanting to connect with humans in a way that begins to pull them out of, let's just say, Plato's cave, pulls them out of the cave, right? Some of the data surrounded that type of talk, where it has to do with giving humans another perspective on things that begin to shake them out of their slumber, and out of their ideas about things, to show them that there is a whole other world of communication and consciousness that they can begin to approach. And so Spong, because he had the openness for that type of thing, started to get impacted by it. And literally, like, all of our data has to do with that orca consciousness, trying, because dolphins love themselves and love humanity. They want to be able to help and lift up and guide humanity into a broader multidimensional perspective of the universe, and want to be able to communicate in a way that they communicate. Now, we always go, like I said before, we go about it like, well, what kind of language can they learn? Like, we could teach them our language, then we'll be able to talk to them. No, no. I mean, yeah, you can, but there is another language that can be used, which is telepathic. And like I said before, it's not those two heads with radio transmissions going back and forth. It has to do more with empathy and
Professor
more.
X
Exactly.
touching the side of his head and,
Right.
you know, beams coming out of it.
Right. It doesn't work like that. It has to do more with the body, because the body is you can consider the body the subconscious, right? The body, most people just are these walking heads. They never really think much about their body below them. The body is just something that holds this.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's about it. But the body is actually the place where it all begins, and the brain is just the translator of the experience that the body is having. That's it. So so if you think of the body as being the subconscious, the body is the thing that receives the information, and then we translate it in our mind, in the brain. And these beings are more conscious, subconscious. They're in both realms at once. There's no discernment between. It's just like all open, right? Whereas we have them categorized. And so what they are trying to do is they are trying to help humans change their way of interaction, of vibration, in a way that's playful and loving and kind for the most part. And they're not a being or a creature who creates technology or creates a high verbal language like we do. They're a highly developed being. So, okay, so when you get to other aspects of them and you talk about this alien thing, yes. I mean, that's, again, we follow these, when we remote view them, we follow them back to origination points. As much as we can, we try to understand, were they something that just developed, evolved here on this planet, or did they come from somewhere else? These beings absolutely did and do and exist in another location somewhere else in the universe. And I know you probably heard channelers or other psychics talking about maybe like Arcturus, or I have no idea.
Sirius. They
Or
they say
Sirius.
the dolphins are from Sirius.
I have no clue at all.
I
No
know, me
clue.
either.
Because it's a known thing. We know where Sirius is, we know where Arcturus is, and those are our names for those locations. But there are many others out there that we don't even have names for, that things could have come from. But yes, so when we go back, we see that these beings have advanced societies underwater. Now, I'm not talking about technology. I'm not talking about building things. Their whole focus has been this internal body structure to build, right? This incredible brain, this incredible communication through sound system, this, like, the utilization of the full 100% of their brain, this full immersive conscious subconscious as one, multidimensionally aware right? And so these beings came here. They came here to this planet because we've got water and they can exist here. And they act as something to pull us along, to help us along in their evolution, because on an evolution scale, I would say that they're up there. They're more ahead of us as far as the spiritual understanding awareness world goes.
Hmm. You know what I found so interesting about this is in our episode where we were talking about elephants and communication, they were largely communicating through seismic low frequency waves. And if you think about it, the other side of that coin almost directly is the orca, who's communicating through the ocean using high frequency waves. If I mean, think about it, how fascinating that is. Like the elephants can communicate over miles and miles using their bodies to create seismic low frequency waves, and then they'll even arrange themselves like a compass to
Right.
figure out where that's coming from and to communicate things over a long distance. Where in the ocean you have orcas who are using the water and communicating through high frequency waves in a language that we couldn't possibly even understand.
Right. Exactly.
And
Yeah.
it's like the elephants, as we said, were like the ambassadors of the earth, and the orcas or the whales are the ambassadors of the sea.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, now this doesn't. I don't have judgment on this personally. Like, I don't have any judgment. I don't think that animals or humans are better than the other. I really don't. They are in their own experience. And in that experience, if we really open ourselves up, we can learn, right? We can learn from them. And that's where I come from with this. So, if anybody has any question of whether, well, we think the animals are better than the humans, it's not like that. There's no judgment on duality with this. At least with me, there's not.
Oh, I mean, for sure. Like, don't
Right.
get me started on how amazing humans are, or can be. I
Right.
mean, if you start
Can
looking,
be.
like, just
Yeah.
go into just go into the Renaissance and start looking at paintings and human beings' ability to
The development
create.
of culture.
It's incredible. It's beyond anything in this entire earth. But we're not talking about that in this episode. We're
Yeah.
talking about how freaking weird elephants and orcas are because they do things that we can't possibly understand. And it's important to try to understand those things so that we as human beings can broaden our understanding and move beyond, I think, the walls that we confine ourselves to right now. This, Plato's cave. I mean, we've got to get out and start seeing things a lot more than where we currently are in our world right now.
Exactly. I mean, we're looking at the shadows on the wall and thinking those things are real. And you know what that is? It's this. It's the constant cogitating process of believing that our words and ideas are real. So we did this project um, long time ago. Dean, I can't remember his last name. There was an IMAX film about Jojo the dolphin, and he had contacted us and wanted us to remote view Jojo to understand kind of what he thought about Dean in general and what his life was like, and basically get into his consciousness. And Jojo was a dolphin who had kind of been, I don't know what happened to him as far as other dolphins were concerned, but he was kind of like thrown out of the pack a
Mm,
bit, mostly because he decided he wanted to stick around humans more. And he would hang around in this beach. I think it was in the Bahamas. And Dean would go out there every day and swim with JoJo and have all these amazing interactions with JoJo. And so when we had remote viewed this dolphin, it was very fascinating because that was actually the first time that I did a consciousness mapping of one of these beings. And obviously, like, I don't know what I'm remote viewing when I'm doing it because we're always kept blind. And I'm going into the consciousness and it just doesn't have. I'm tripping out because I I'm writing it all down, saying this consciousness is different than humans. It's not like humans. And when I started to probe more of its conscious type thoughts, or at least what I think they are, I've categorized them as that. It's it's trying to learn how to speak. It's trying to learn how to communicate to humans using sound. So it was trying to emulate. And what this dolphin really wanted to do was to be able to talk, to speak to Dean, to speak to others in order to share experiences, because it had this whole world of information to tell everyone that came in contact with it. And it goes back to this stuff with the orca consciousness and why it's here. And absolutely fascinating when you said something about orcas gave themselves up to humans in order
Mm.
to become connected. I mean, that is literally the stuff that we saw with regard to the orcas and with regard to dolphins, is that the orcas allowed themselves to be in that position, right? They allowed themselves to be captured and be in that position so that they can begin to change some type of paradigm that humans have. So they're completely, as far as we've seen, this service to other type of society, and not just service to other within their own ranks, but service to other beings just in general, highly compassionate beings. And so that's like where Jojo was coming from as well. And the need to really, because humans weren't stepping up, and they quite often don't step up to communicate on the level of those animals. Now every single human being has the capability to feel in some and use some form of telepathy, what we call telepathy, not the radio transmission mind to mind stuff, but more subtle, like impacting the nervous system type stuff where we translate, like remote viewing is, right? um, we all have the ability to do that, and it's often that humans don't step into that ability, and they expect everything to come towards them and communicate the way they communicate. So Jojo was trying to step towards humans to communicate using verbal sounds, which was really quite interesting. Now, if you, in our data, if you decided that you wanted to connect to Jojo in a telepathic way, it would be huge bursts that would be very apparent that this being, because that's why it was hanging around humans. That's why it was hanging around the beach. Now I don't know where he is today, but that's why he was doing this, because it seems to be, at least with remote viewing data, that the whole like purpose, a huge, not the whole purpose, but a huge part of their purpose for the dolphins that interact with humans. It's like a facet of their society, and why they're here is to help humans along.
Mm. That's really, really interesting. Okay, yeah, you guys, hope you enjoyed this episode on dolphins. I mean, you really can never finish talking about these types of creatures. Just it's so interesting. Like there's something really different about them, and I think, I hope that these shows do what these, you know, beings are intending, which is for human beings to open up their mind a little bit more about these different things. It's not to say humans are worse or should lower themselves below animals or something like that. I don't think that that's a part of this. It's more of just like, what really is this world that we live in? And I mean, it's just fascinating. So, John, thanks so much for being with us, and for everybody at home, we hope you guys thought that this episode was as out of this world as we did.